Hi, it's time for Corona story time again. My name's Dave. I'm going to be reading the first chapter from the first book in a series by John M. Sweeney, illustrated by Roy De Leon. The first book is called The Pope's Cat, and I'll be reading the first chapter. People walk by Maria's Roma Gelato stand every day without noticing the cat sitting on the cobblestones. Actually, she isn't so much sitting as she is lounging in the shade provided by Maria's trash cans. But the people are too busy. They are talking, rushing across the Via della Conciliazione, often with lunch in hand, and obviously thinking about other things, other than, what is this little cat doing in the midst of busy Rome? Who is she? Where does she live? She lives right here on the streets, usually near the Roma Gelato, but sometimes under the back porch of Anthony's fish market around the corner. That's where Anthony's cooks throw out the scraps every night into a large blue dumpster. Yum. The busy people on the Via della Conciliazione also have no idea that this stray Roman cat is about to become the most famous cat in the whole world. She used to be just another feline on the streets, a menace to good society, as the mayor of Rome once said in a speech, announcing a campaign to rid the great city of every stray animal. He sent dog catchers and cat catchers in tiny vans to every neighborhood each evening after dark for 2 weeks straight, rounding up strays by the hundred. But that was before this Pope was elected. Our cat was there in St. Peter's Square among the thousands of people who stood waiting for the announcement from the Sistine Chapel of the election of a new pope, the man who would lead the worldwide Roman Catholic Church. No one saw her that day, either. It was as if she was invisible, but she was there at people's feet, making sure not to get stepped on. And she appreciated all the spare food they eventually left behind. She feasted that night. It was 3 weeks after the election of the new pope that they first met. He was walking outside the Vatican early one morning. You see, the pope loves to escape the thick walls of the Vatican from time to time, and he often sneaks out a back door to catch the morning sunrise. The pope likes to hear the birds singing and see the city before it wakes up. Also, there are no tourists there at dawn. Later in the day, he couldn't possibly just stroll along the Via della Conciliazione. He never gets to buy a gelato from a stand like Maria's. People would shout his name, run to catch up with him, or touch his clothes, or ask him for a special blessing. They would surround him until he couldn't move an inch further. That's why he likes these mornings. It's so quiet. On this particular day, as the sun was just coming up over the roofs of the buildings, there was the little stray cat crouched behind the trash cans, tilting her face to catch some of the warm rays. She also enjoys those early morning quiet moments. "Here, kitty," the Pope gently said when he saw her. He noticed that she had no collar, but she turned away, nose in the air. "I see that you also enjoy a beautiful sunrise," he added. Then he said, "Oh, come, come, little kitty." But she lifted her tail, as cats will do, as if to say, "Thank you, but no." How refreshing, thought the Pope, who after a few weeks in his new job was already weary of all the secretaries and assistants who said yes to him all day long and who waited on his every word. How he longed to spend time with the good friends he had before he had to put on the papal robe, or simply visit a gelato stand. So he smiled at the cat's reluctance. Then he got down on his hands and knees right there on the sidewalk. No one was around. No one was there but the two of them. "Vieni qui, dolcezza," the Pope said, just above a whisper in Italian. That means, "Come here, sweetness." That got her attention. She turned back toward him, saw his open face and his hands outstretched. Slowly, she walked toward him. Then she stopped just short of where he was crouching on the sidewalk. "Dai," he said gently, which sounds like dai. It's an Italian expression that means come on or please. She couldn't resist the warm look on his face, so she took the last step toward him and rubbed up against his forearm. The Pope picked her up in his arms. Then he said, "What's your name, sister?" She purred. A minute later, and this little stray cat was tucked inside the cassock of this Pope, and he was walking with her back inside the Vatican apartments. The only person who saw what happened was a single Swiss guard outside the back door, and he pretended not to notice. Once inside, the Pope set our cat down on a couch in his apartment. "You look hungry," he said, and reached in a cupboard for a box of sugar cookies that he keeps there. "These are delicious," he said, as he took out 3 and placed them on a plate on the table in front of her. "Eat," he suggested. "You'll like these. I do." At first, she only licked them. They were good. Within a few seconds, though, she was gobbling them up in just a few bites. Then she settled back on the couch, looking quite satisfied, licking her whiskers of all the extra sugar. A minute after that, and she was turning around and around, plunging her feet into the cushions, preparing to settle herself in a ball in a comfortable corner. She already felt at home. The Pope then had to leave for breakfast in another room. While he was there, he happened to mention to the others at breakfast that he had made a friend that morning. "Who is it?" they asked him. "A beautiful girl," the Pope said, and they all smiled, imagining that a distinguished family had come for an audience with the Pope already that day. They wondered who the girl and the distinguished family might be. Meanwhile, at breakfast, the Pope kept wondering how his new friend was doing back in his apartment. By the time he returned there 30 minutes later, she was sound asleep on the couch. He looked at her lovingly. "Margaret," he said quietly to himself. "I shall call you Margaret." All right, that's it for now. Enjoy your day.
I love that story.